Good evening, everyone. It is September 21st, 2023. Thank you for joining us this evening as we talk about the power of community, organizing awareness, and fundraising events. Tonight, we have Dr. Mousumi Bose, who has experience hosting Ilan-a-thon in her own hometown, and she's going to give her background and why she's so excited to be speaking to everybody tonight. And for those of us who are joining us live, please remember that this is being recorded. If you have any privacy concerns, please take precautions to your comfort level. Please keep your microphone off. You can have your camera on if you wish, but please do keep your microphone off until the question or answer portion at the end of the session. Without further ado, Dr. Bose.
Thank you, Keely. I really appreciate the introduction, and I'm super excited to be here. I just joined the ULF Board of Directors earlier this year, and I'm very excited to be able to, pull my weight in my role in the fundraising committee by sharing a little bit of experience of what I've had with respect to local fundraising for a nonprofit organization like the ULF. So I'll just start by sharing a little bit about myself. I'm having trouble advancing. Hold on one second. So just a little bit about me. And one of the first things that I want to say that I have absolutely no education or training in fundraising. This is something that I did as the mom of a child with a rare disease. So I just want to say that to highlight that, this, and I'm going to sort of over and over again, everybody in this audience and anybody that listens to this presentation, you all have the resources to be able to pull off a fundraiser if that's something that you want to do. And my goal here is to sort of really empower and get you to think about empower you and get you to think about if this is something that you want to do. These are some strategies that I've used with my community to pull off a fundraiser. And bottom line, if we can do it, then anybody can do it. So going back to a little bit about me, I am the parent of Ilan, and that's who's pictured here. Ilan had a paroxysomal disorder called Zellweger spectrum disorder. He had a very severe form of the disorder, and he lived about 14 months. He actually, one of the things that happened nearing the end of his life, he had a pretty aggressive leukodystrophy that really made his disease progression deteriorate pretty fast. So he passed away in 2011. My experience with my son very much changed my life in so many different ways. It actually allowed me to pursue a career in doing rare disease research. I was a researcher before I had Ilan, but when after he had passed away, my research focus changed. So now I'm actually doing rare disease research in New Jersey, and that's just one of the ways that Ilan has affected my life. Another thing that we've done as a community is that we've in a way to sort of honor Ilan is we've held these fundraisers in memory of him, and that's really what I'm going to be talking about tonight. So I, with the help of a lot of really important people, organized 3 5K fundraisers throughout 2013 to 2016. I've also organized a virtual 5K. We took a year off in between 2014 and 2015, and I'm not going to talk too much about that tonight. But if this is something that you're interested in doing, that we were able to raise a decent amount of money for a virtual 5K, not as much as we did for our in-person event, but it's definitely something that can be done relatively easily. And one of the things that you'll hear me say a lot in this presentation is that there's really no fundraiser that's too small to be useful to a benefiting organization like the ULF. So before I get into the details of our fundraiser, I just want to start with a little bit of, just take a step back and just talk about, organizing these fundraisers. They do take time, and that really tends to be the biggest limiting factor when putting one of these fundraisers together. So, the question sort of that really I wanted to sort of present is, well, why do we do a fundraiser when it takes a little bit of time? And I can't speak for everybody who organizes a fundraiser, but I'll tell you a little bit of my why. I know for me, during the course of my son's life, one of my biggest sort of issues, besides, you know, the fact that my son had this devastating disease, was that I felt super helpless throughout the course of his life. There was nothing that I could do for him, and I'm a very type A person. When there's a problem in my life, I have to figure out how to fix it. And so this was really hard for me to have to like wrap my head around the fact that there was nothing that I could do to help him. And I really didn't like that feeling at all. And so when we decided to take on this fundraiser, that was actually one of my biggest motivations, is that it allowed me to feel a lot less helpless than I did before. And, you know, the fundraiser aspect of it, it's really, you know, I'm really glad that we were able to help our community, help this organization. But it was actually super healing for me and helped me sort of, you know, manage some of my feelings around, you know, my experience with my son. So that's part of my why. You know, another reason, and this, you know, I don't have to speak to all of you about rare disease and stats regarding rare disease. We all know that rare diseases have, you know, very, very little research compared to, you know, more common diseases. And in that sort of, it's, you know, there's very few treatment options. There's a lot less options for rare diseases than there are for, you know, more common diseases. And one of the reasons that we don't have a lot of treatment options is because not many people know about them, and there's limited research. So having a fundraiser like this will increase awareness, and it has the potential to increase funding, and funding is what drives research. So there is urgent need to fund more research. That was definitely part of my motivation when we put our fundraisers together. And during the course of my son's life and afterwards, I had a whole bunch of people come up to me and ask me, you know, let me know what I can do to, or tell me let me know what I can do to help, or ask me what can I do to help. And at the time, I mean, I definitely didn't need another thing to do in terms of like thinking about how people can. Having this fundraiser actually gave me a mechanism to actually go to people and be like, you want to know how I can help? Here's how you can help. Be a part of this, you know, this effort that me and my family are doing, and that will mean so much to me, and that will do so much. So again, those are part of my whys. You know, everyone who decides to organize a fundraiser, they all have their own whys. But you know, one of the biggest things, and I say this at the end of my presentation, is that if you have the drive, if you have the urge to have a fundraiser, that's essentially one of the most important things that you need. You know, so you know, having that why was really a driving factor in being able to pull off this event successfully. So let's get down to some of the details. So I'm going to be using the races that we organized as a kind of example or a case study, and give you the details of, you know, what we did to be able to pull off this event. But I'm going to try my best to sort of you know, keep it broad. So because my goal here is not to tell you go organize a 5K. What my goal is to give you some ideas of, if you are interested in doing a fundraiser, you know, here are some ways to get started. So I'm going to be using our race as a sort of case study as an example, but definitely understand that there are so many different ways to do this. You know, I'm just sort of setting kind of like a foundation of how to get started in organizing any kind of fundraiser. So this race, we called it the Ilan-a-thon because my son's name is Ilan, and Linda, my co-organizer, who is pictured up here in the black and white up top, she came up with this name, and it really stuck, and we just I'm super happy with that name, and it really caught on. So I'm very thankful to her for that. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, the sort of what the Ilan-a-thon was. So I was actually, at the time, I was on the board of directors for the Global Foundation for Paroxysmal Disorders. So a subset of disorders that, you know, that are characterized by leukodystrophies. So that was my benefiting organization. In this effort, we organized, as I said before, 3 live walk run events in the Baltimore area. That's where I'm originally from. And collectively, throughout all the 3 races, we had something like we had close to 1,000 attendees, and we were able to raise close to $80,000 across all 3 races. And this amount may seem big or small depending on what you're sort of used to. We were super proud that we were able to raise much money for the organization. But in terms of amounts of money, like, again, I want to hammer in that there is no fundraiser that's too small to be useful to a benefiting organization. And if you decide to take on doing a local fundraiser, and if among the people that watch this, if half of the people decide to take on a local fundraiser where they raise anywhere from $100 to $1,000, you put all that stuff together, and it ends up being a very large sum that can benefit your benefiting organization. Okay, so the way that I'm going to organize this presentation is really just go through the details of the different steps that we took to organize our race. And so I've just listed them here. I'm not gonna go through them right now, but I'm gonna go through each of these, or the majority of these, by one, and give a little bit more detail. I want to just highlight that these bullet points that I've listed here, they're kind of in a chronological order, but the truth of the matter is some of these steps you can do sort of all at the same time. And depending on how big your team is, you can delegate responsibilities to cover one task while another person is completing another task, depending on what is the event that you decide to try to execute. So I'm gonna go through all of these steps. And then at the end, if anybody has any questions about any sort of details, I'll be happy to take any questions that you have. So one of the first things to do is really just determine what it is that you want to do. What do you feel like you have the bandwidth to organize? And again, no event too small. And the other thing that that might be a good thing to think about is, take a sort of assessment of your community. What do they like to do? Do they like to go bowling? Do they like to go to happy hours? And use that information to help determine what type of, use that information and what you have the bandwidth for to determine what you want to do. I'll tell you, when I decided to do this race, I think we had another family in our organization that had organized a race, and I remember looking through their website and ultimately thinking to myself, wait, I can do this. And then I went to my co-organizer, Linda, who probably should have said, no, please don't take on another task right now. But what she did do, when I told her I want to organize a race, she was like, yes, let's do this. And so here we are, 3 races later. But any event any event where there's community congregation can be a fundraiser. So up until our first Ilan-a-thon event in 2013, we were doing very small fundraisers to help raise some funding to support the Ilan-a-thon race. So we had a benefit Pilates class, we had a boot camp, we had a happy hour. So whatever it is that your community is into, that your family is and your community is into it, you can make into a fundraiser. So that's the first thing, is decide what it is that you want to do. And it can be as something as simple as doing like a community dinner, like a spaghetti dinner or something like that. And sometimes those really like grassroots events tend to be the most successful, because it really allows for an opportunity for the community to interact and get together. So we decided on a race, and the next thing that we did after we decided what we were going to do is basically reach out to our network. And this is where I was able to reach out to a lot of people that were asking me, what can I do to help? And we put together a pretty impressive team of people that I'm still, to this day, I'm so touched that these folks, if you look here over in the picture on the right where it says refreshments, everybody there in this picture I either went to college with or is part of my family. And it was everybody just really rallied and banded together to help out with this race effort. I have my sister over here to the left doing admin, and then when you're assembling your team, one thing that was really helpful to us is really trying to figure out what everybody's strengths were and how can we leverage that in the execution of our event. So I had, when we started putting our event together, just as an example, we had somebody who was an artist and was offering to do face painting services. And then we had another person that knew how to put together balloon animals. And so we made them at part of our race day event. And it's really it's little things like this that allowed our event to be a really like family friendly, community engaged event. So that's one thing. And then, once you have your team, you can use them and use their networks to really like have an expanded reach to get people to participate in your event. If you are looking for sponsors or any sort of in-kind donations, you can use that network to help garner sponsorships or any sort of in-kind donations for your event. So there's a lot of ways to use your team so that they can really help you pull whatever event off successfully. And there's no way that I would have been able to do this if I didn't have such an incredible team. So that's kind of the next thing that you want to do. And then once you've figured out who's going to help you out with this, and once you have decided what you're going to do, it's really a good idea to really sit down and think about what are going to be the expenditures that you're going to need to be able to execute this event. And that's, one of in sort of doing that activity, it allows you to figure out how much you need in order to be able to have however much you take in be benefiting to your benefiting organization like the ULF. And so when you're figuring out what your expenditures are, an activity that worked for me is I went through the event in my head and figured out from the moment that event started till the moment it ended what would be the things that we would need in order to pull it off. And I definitely missed a lot of things when it actually came close to race day and we had to sort of scroll and figure these things out. But just starting out as an activity to figure out what your expenditures are, and while you're doing this might be a good time to communicate to your benefiting organization to let them know that you want to organize a fundraiser. Now, with the GFPD, the Global Foundation for Paroxysmal Disorders, at that time they had a full a process where we had to apply for saying that we were going to hold an event, and that sort of application allowed us to use their logos, and it became this sort of collaboration thing. Now, currently, the ULF doesn't have a formal policy for what needs to set up a sort of fundraising collaboration, but I would definitely recommend that if you want to hold an event that benefits the ULF, reach out to us and let us know that you want to do this, and in whatever way that we can help you, whether it be through marketing or through something else, we will do our best to try to help you. At the same time, when you're figuring out what your expenditures are, it might be a good idea to reach out to the ULF and see what, how we can make this a collaborative effort. So that's another step. And again, these things don't necessarily need to happen chronologically, but they will end up happening in some sort of order. Once you've figured out what your expenditures are, then it's time to really start procuring items once you've established what your event is going to be. So that is, and figuring out the logistics as well. So you start with figuring out with what is the date of your event, what is the venue, and start reaching out to the venue, seeing if there's any costs associated with using that venue. Because we were doing a big race, you may want to consider having a management group. So I found a management group to do our race, and they provided our bibs, they timed the races, they helped us get liability insurance for our event. And what was really nice is this particular company actually had a nonprofit rate for managing our event that was significantly lower than their for-profit events that they were doing. And they had a lot of connections with the different institutions to be able to get permits and insurance in the local area. We ended up, it was through our event management company. They provided, like I said, the bibs, and they did timing. They also provided these arches at the beginning of the race. They provided a lot of stuff for our race to make our race look official. What's more is that they got us liability insurance through USA Track and Field, so that anybody that participated in our race, they could use their time. Their time would allow them to qualify for much bigger races. And that was sort of an incentive for anybody that was participating in our event. So that may be, you having a management service may be something that you do depending on how big your event is, but it's not necessary if it's a smaller event. There needs to be a way to, if you are people register for your event, to be able to register, and your benefiting organization may be able to help with setting up a registration site similar to what that organization uses for like conferences or something like that. And after establishing those goods and those logistics, then it's time to really procure your goods and services that you need to be able to execute this event. So some of the things that, like, as I was planning out the race in my mind, that I didn't think about at the beginning, but it eventually, when I started thinking about, oh, well, people may be registering on site, so people may be bringing cash. So we ended up, having to get security. We actually had a nurse donate their time to medical services because this was a running race and it was hot because it was in the beginning of the summer. We had to think about getting like porta-johns because we had a lot of people register for our event. And then we had things like medals, but for people that had good times for the race. But all of these services and goods will be totally dependent on what fundraiser you decide to put together. Another important step is gathering sponsors. And again, depending on the size of your event, this might be a very big task or a very little task, but we were able to set up sponsorship levels for our sponsors. We had both business and family sponsors. And when we set up these sponsorship levels, we, in addition to telling them, okay, if you sponsor this much, we offered them incentives. So if it was a business, we offered them the ability to advertise on all of our signage. For the family sponsors, we, for each family that sponsored, we gave them a certain amount of free registrations for their sponsorship. And we really tried to be very mindful about acknowledging everybody that supported our race. So our signage was a big thing. In addition to financial sponsorship, we also were definitely trying to get in-kind services. So this was a race, so we wanted to have refreshments. So we had like a local grocery store donate fruits and water bottles. We had a DJ donate their services, so there was music playing during our event. So this is where you really start to use your team's network to help help offset some of the costs of putting this event together. And again, it's all going to be different based on what size and what type of event you have. So one thing I want to say is that one of the best approaches to garner sponsorship is really use the network that you have already established. However, you may want to also reach out to businesses that you don't necessarily have a connection with, but maybe they have a strong community presence, and maybe they could really benefit from supporting a community event. So one thing that we did was we sent out these letters to different businesses in the area. We took one to like Target or other stores to help give us either gift cards or actual financial sponsorship. So one thing that I did is for my team is I gave them a stock letter template so that if they wanted to reach out and do that as well, they had something that was already set in place and they really didn't have to do too much thinking and putting these requests together. So if you are thinking about doing a letter campaign for sponsorships for whatever event you're planning, it's always a good idea to talk a little bit about why the event's happening, who's it benefiting, what will your sponsorship due, for the organization, and then be very specific about what you're looking for. What are you looking for? Financial sponsorship? Are you looking for in-kind donations? And then following that, being very specific on what incentives you will give to them should they sponsor your event. And this was probably successful about 5% of the time, but that 5% really made a difference. We were able to get a local bank to support our race for a couple of years, and we had a couple other local businesses in the Baltimore area that we were able to get sponsorships from through us disseminating these letters. Probably one of the most important things to do when you've decided to have an event is really market it. And there's so many unique and ways to market now, and I'm probably not very well versed in a lot of them, but it's really easy to market an event when you have some access to social media. We definitely had a Facebook event page. At the time, I wasn't extremely familiar with Instagram, but my co-organizer was, so she set up an Instagram page for our event. And then utilizing whatever connections that you have, or sending out, or using your letter writing ability to reach out to local news stations, local papers. We had one local paper cover our story, and then we also had a local news station cover our story, which is this sort of a screenshot that you see down on the bottom. And in these sort of stories, it ends up being like a kind of human interest piece where they talked a little bit about my life with my son, and then they used it as a platform to plug our event. My co-organizer is a producer by trade, so she has connections with different studios. So we were very fortunate in being able to actually record a public PSA for the Ilan-a-thon, and that's what you see as a screenshot here on the right, where I look very awkward and my husband's speaking. So there was a lot of different channels that we were able to market our event. One of the ULF board of directors, he actually recommended to me a long time ago to reach out to one of our local radio stations. It ended up being a radio station that I listened to a lot when I was a kid. So when I was writing to them, asking them to fund our event, I used that information in my letter. I was a big fan of their station, and they gave us $1,000, and they actually invited us to come on the air for their morning show and talk a little bit about our event, and they made it this big promotional thing. So we were very fortunate to have a lot of opportunities. But seriously, if you have access to social media, then sometimes that's all you need. But if you have access to other media channels, then definitely use them. The day of the race, we were actually, before we had the race, we actually sent out the word to a lot of like our local high schools, and offered, a lot of high schools in the US, they have like community service requirements. And so we asked some of the local high schools if they had students that wanted to fulfill community service requirements by volunteering for our race. And it was super successful in not just getting volunteers for our race, but also getting participants to actually run or walk in our race. So when we got all of these volunteers, there was a lot of delegation that needed to happen in order to actually have the race itself. So we got volunteers to help with registration, volunteers to help with any of the entertainment, any sort of opening activities, and we were able to put together, with the volunteers' help, as well as like our marketing for registration. You can see here at the top, we had a really amazing turnout for our races, and I'm still sort of shocked at what we were able to pull off. So once you've executed your race, if it's something that you want to have some sustainability, where you can do these fundraisers regularly, a really important to do following your event is really to follow up with everybody that made your race, your event, a success. So that includes people that participated, that certainly includes your sponsors, and it definitely includes your volunteers and those who donated their time to help out and pull this off. And this is where you again go back to your social media channels or any other networking channels to to highlight everybody's, participation in being able to make your event a success, and really kind of set the stage for organizing future events and keeping that sort of connection going, so that they will be willing and excited to support you in future events. So that's really it. I just wanted to share a little bit of our experience, and really one thing I wanted to say is, I think when you're organizing these fundraisers, again, you can be as creative as you want in organizing these fundraisers. So we did a race, and that was very commonplace, and that's something that a lot of people do for fundraisers. But the ULF has had families that have done some really unique fundraisers. So I've gotten just a few examples here. Somebody held a kickball tournament, and we've had people set up concession stands at like other events where they're selling stuff for benefiting the ULF. I have no idea how this happened, so I don't know the logistics of this, but somebody set up like a gaming stream event to raise money, and I just think that's super cool. So that's, I mean, like, whatever is important to you and whatever you have the bandwidth for and whatever your community is interested in, the sort of sky's the limit in what you can do in organizing one of these fundraisers. So I will just end again by saying there's no fundraiser that's too small to be beneficial to organizations like the ULF. And anyone, you have the resource to be able to organize any kind of fundraiser. Like, if that's something that you want to do, all you need is your desire to do it, and your village, your community of people, because those folks are really important. And then the sort of biggest limiting factor that we see in these fundraisers is really your time. But other than that, you have the ability, everyone who sees this presentation has the ability to pull off a fundraiser if that's something that's interesting to you. And like I said, if we were able to do it, then anybody could do it. So I'm just going to end there. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And Linda here, my co-organizer, who's also willing to share her experience in organizing this race, these events.
If I may jump in for just a moment, I would like to echo what you were saying of no fundraiser is too small. For example, a wonderful way that we've seen in the past couple of years is people taking advantage of trick-or-treating. So they create goodie bags that have little informational pieces, a little piece of paper that just says, hey, here's some leukodystrophy facts. We even had one family that had a little collection jar, and people were throwing their change and things in there. And I want to say, really, I don't want to say it only raised about $75, but that was $75 that we didn't have before. And considering it was only a half an hour of time because they lived in a very small town, but they utilized trick-or-treating to spread the word and also raise a little meager amount of money in a fundraiser that really had no marketing, had no prep or setup. It was just their own, they just kind of went out with the table, and that's what they were able to accomplish. So really the sky is the limit, and your creativity can take you so far. And I would also like to introduce Diane Fenimore. She is our executive director for the ULF. And, she may chime in with any questions that people might have regarding fundraising that includes the ULF and how we can collaborate. So if you want to just introduce yourself for a moment, Diane.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here participating in this presentation. I've been with the organization 2 weeks. I'm incredibly proud and happy to now be a member of the United Leukodystrophy Foundation and being a part of the community. So thank you for joining us today. And I just want to echo that no fundraiser is too small. So put your thinking caps on, and I'm sure you can come up with a great idea that is also simple and straightforward to implement as well.
And I'm going to bounce off of something that Keely just said about, this one family through their trick-or-treating efforts, that they just raised $75. But if you can get 10 families to do this, now you've got that you're $75, $750. And so that it adds up, very, very quickly. And anything can be very, very useful to the ULF.
And if I may, hello, Linda Meyer. I was a co-chair with Dr. Bose and a couple other folks for the Ilan-a-thon. And social media is very important, whatever your event is. I like the idea of a spaghetti dinner. Dr. Bose, I think that would be really fun. But have, as much as social media is great in this day and age, it's become a little more monetized than it was than we were doing it. It was more organic. It was a bigger spread. So word of mouth, I remember very clearly, still is the best way to get your cause on people's radar, get right to the meat of the story. And what will help with that is having a 1 or 2 sentence description of what the ULF is doing and who it's helping. And then back it up with those awesome cards that folks were giving out in the trick-or-treat bags and things like that. But just being able to make that human connection and just describe, a personal story or someone of it, that will get on their radar and it will stay on their radar. And that is, I think, really how we got to have so many great people help us is, the story of Ilan and his parents and his family and his community. So have that concise description ready, because we are all doing way too much in our culture these days. And if you can have a takeaway in a very short way, that it'll get you very far.
So if anybody has any questions or comments, we are here.
I'd like to add another 2 cents.
Not
only I loquacious, but I think it's important. In terms of a timeline, putting together whatever event it is, be it small, not small. And again, no fundraiser is small, but if it's a lot of work or a little work, give yourself about 3 times as much time as you think it's going to take to do it. That way you have time to iron out any wrinkles that are unforeseen. And this is also an occupational hazard for me as a video and producers. We learn the hard way, and just trust me on that. Give yourself more time than you think you need so that you can not only do it well for your community and for the ULF, but you can also enjoy the process.
There's some good producer words, Linda. And that's actually what happened. I think we had planned on actually executing our race in 2012. And then at some point we were like, this is not happening in 2012. And then I was like, it's going to happen in 2013. And sometimes that happens, and it is what it is. We ended up doing it and it was fine. And here we are at the other end doing, having done 3. So.
And add to that, it also gives you more time to share the word with your community and get more people involved and get more people to participate, whether it's car washes or
like, good idea.
Thank you. Pasta, don't get pasta donated for your spaghetti dinner. Get the meatballs, have that 501c3 document at the ready so they can say, oh, yeah, you're legitimate. Here, go. Take all the meatballs you want. It's great.
Wonderful. I just want to say one more time, thank you to everyone that's joined us live tonight or is joining us for the recording. Thank you, Dr. Bose, Mousumi, and Linda for being here and offering your expertise. It's been fantastic. And as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to the ULF in regards to anything that you might need. We are wonderful thought partners and brainstormers. And if there is an answer that we can't give you right off the tip of our tongue, we will certainly help you find that answer and direct you to the right resources to be able to do so. So thank you so much for joining us again tonight. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.